Welcome to the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show.
Cup of Joe Wrestling Show?
With Joey Harris. A podcast for the wrestling fan on the go. So take your favorite beverage of choice and join Joey as he takes a look at some of the biggest shows on the WWE Network.
From makeshift studios deep in the heart of stately Maine Manor, this is the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show, and I'm your host, Joey Harris. Folks, how are you doing? Are you letting the craziness of January get to you? You know, I am excited. I got my birthday coming up, and right after that, the 1 year anniversary of the podcast, and going greater than I ever thought it would, to have people listen to I'm just a guy from North Carolina living in Maine doing a podcast about wrestling by himself. And there's got to be dozens of those, right? Amongst the millions of wrestling podcasts out there. But I thank you for joining me. We are growing. Slow and steady, but we are growing. And I am just so happy that you are joining me for the ride. Today, we look at the Saturday night's main event from January 1990. This was Saturday night's main event number 25, was shown on NBC January the 27th, 1990. It was taped on January the 3rd, 1990, from the UTC Arena in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Opening credits of Vince McMahon hyping the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan teaming up for the first time ever. Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura welcome us to the show. Jesse runs down Tennessee. Jesse then says that the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan can't get along. They then run down the rest of the card. Mean Gene Okerlund interviews Jim Duggan. They talk about Randy Savage winning the King title as a flashback is shown. Mean Gene then interviews Randy Savage and Queen Sherry. Savage calls the people peasants and then is carried to ringside. Jim Duggan versus Randy Savage with Queen Sherry. Duggan dumps Savage off of his throne. Duggan has the early advantage. Sherry is looking very nice. The tables are then turned. Savage is moving so smoothly. Lots of interference in this one. Duggan pulls Sherry in and harasses her. She then loads her purse and Savage gets it. Duggan gets hit but kicks out before the 3 count. Duggan then hits the 3-point stance. Sherry holds Duggan's leg as Savage pins him. Jesse interviews Mr. Perfect and the Genius. Perfect says that the two of them are the perfect combination against Warrior and Hogan. Flashback to the Royal Rumble confrontation between Hogan and Warrior. Mean Gene interviews the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan. They talk about turbulence. No, really. Somehow it makes sense. Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior versus Mr. Perfect and the Genius. Separate face entrances. Hogan slams the heels several times each. Perfect bumps all around for Hogan and Warrior. Perfect then gets Genius's scroll and hits Hogan with it. Perfect hits the Perfectplex, but the Genius wants to hit a moonsault for the win. Ray Charles could see what was coming next. Hogan moves and tags in Warrior. Warrior cleans house. Hogan drops the leg on the Genius to win. The heels then attack both men. Warrior fighting back and clotheslines Hogan accidentally. Flashback to Jake Roberts taking the $1 million belt. Mean Gene then interviews Jake Roberts. Jake says to see if the belt is in the bag, all you have to do is reach in. Jesse interviews Greg Valentine and Jimmy Hart. They say forget the bag. Remember the hammer. Jake Roberts with Damien versus Greg Valentine with Jimmy Hart. Jake shows the belt with Damien wrapped around it. Valentine opens up the chop house but can't get a 3 count. Roberts takes a hard bump against the ropes. Valentine shoved into Hart and Roberts hits the DDT. Ted DiBiase and Virgil come in for the disqualification but can't get the belt due to Damien. Jesse interviews Bobby Heenan and Rick Rude. They put down Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire and bring up the Jesse the Body Award. So if you're drinking at home, you can take a shot. Mean Gene interviews Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire. They say it's the decade of Dusty Rhodes and the Common Man. This is the interview that originates the "a place to stick it" line. I was on the early internet, at least early for me, 1997. Come back from my sophomore year of college, and they finally had the proper computer lab with access to the internet. And so I get on the wrestling internet at the time, and they talk about Dusty Rhodes saying this line about Sapphire being his manager, and it was the punchline, or the key line was "a place to stick it." And I'm like, oh, that's so weird, and just thought, hey, it's something somebody misheard, or it's lost to the sands of time. But then I get the network and I'm watching this, and I realize this is where it comes from. So give it a listen.
Saturday night's main event, Dusty Rhodes, and welcome to you, Sapphire. Both of you heard the comments made by Ravishing Rick Rude. He claims that Sapphire is his for the asking. He claims he can have you at the snap of his fingers. Your comments, Sapphire?
He's nothing next to my little bit of Dusty.
Well said, Sapphire. Dusty, with freedom for the common man flourishing the world over, is this the decade of the common man? Is this the Dusty decade?
Ooh, Mean Gene. Dusty likes the sound of that. But, it's more than the decade of the common man. It's the decade of the common woman, like my precious Sapphire. And that's why I'm here tonight. Rick Rude been treating women bad. Mean Gene, you've been seeing him treating women bad in the audience all over. That's got to stop, baby. And I'm here to do the stopping, right, baby?
Hey, what about Bobby Heenan?
Ooh, what about Sapphire?
Oh, you've got a point.
And a place to stick it, Jack. Come on, Sapphire.
You see, that is just brilliance right there. Way to go, Dusty. That leads us to Dusty Rhodes with Sapphire versus Rick Rude with Bobby Heenan. Jesse says Rhodes and Sapphire are tons of fun. Two different styles here, but it works. Heenan intimidates Sapphire. After a couple of rounds of this, the referee throws Heenan out. Sapphire has to go too. Jesse is irate that Heenan has to leave. Sapphire shows back up at ringside with a ticket, and that sets Jesse off. They talk about Mike Tyson being a referee at the upcoming Main Event 3 show, but life happens between the two events. Back and forth. Sapphire taunts Rude. Rhodes and Rude brawl on the outside, and both men get counted out. Rhodes and Sapphire dance afterwards, and folks, that is a sight to behold. Mean Gene interviews Jimmy Hart, Dino Bravo, and Earthquake. Bravo is ready for Ronnie Garvin. Ronnie Garvin versus Dino Bravo with Jimmy Hart and Earthquake. They talk about Dino Bravo's bench press record, so again, if you're drinking at home, you can take a shot. Hart climbs up and Garvin throws him onto Earthquake, who catches him with ease. Bravo rolls through a crossbody and wins. Earthquake splashes Garvin twice afterwards, and Garvin is taken away on a stretcher. Ronnie Garvin, after the Royal Rumble, is basically the jobber to the stars. I know a lot of people don't like the term jobber, but he was enhancement talent, or he was the name guy that would team up with another enhancement talent to take on a tag team, and the other guy would usually have the pin put on him instead of Garvin. But Garvin makes a good living for most of the rest of the year doing this, and he realizes that his career is winding down, and so you take the money to make the money, right? Jesse interviews Randy Savage about the February the 23rd event. Savage says he's ready for Hogan and that Mike Tyson better call it down the middle. Mean Gene interviews Hulk Hogan about February the 23rd. He says he's ready to put the Randy Savage issue to rest. Vince and Jesse talk about the events on the 23rd before signing off from the UTC arena. Hey folks, would you please do me a favor? If you like the show, please leave a review in iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or your podcast platform of choice. It helps people to find the show. There are a number of ways that you can contact me. You can follow the show's Twitter at Cup of Joe Pod, and we have had an uptick, a giant uptick in people following the show's Twitter the last week or so, and I'm extremely thankful for that. You can email the show at any time at cupofjoewrestlingshow@gmail.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I am at the Joey Harris. Thank you for joining me this week. This is Joey Harris saying so long from Stately Maine Manor.
The Cup of Joe Wrestling Show is a production of Baby Kangaroo Media.